Destin, it's lovely to speak to you here today about Short Term 12. Fantastic film, congratulations on that. Of course, it was based on ideas from your first job out of college, which was working in a foster care facility for teens. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your first day there?
Oh, my first day there was quite eventful. I think I walked into the gates there with a bit of a naive outlook on my role in that place, and I think I initially thought that I was going to be the cool guy that everybody, that all the kids liked, and that I was going to, make the world a better place for them to be in, and had these sort of grand ideas of that. But it took about 30 minutes before one of the young men there threw a plastic chair across the room, and it hit the plexiglass window a couple feet from my head. And that was, I think, the moment that I realized how complicated everything was there. And over the course of the 2 years that I worked there, I quickly learned that initial attitude was pretty unhealthy. It was an unhealthy way to look at things, and that it wasn't about me coming in to like save the world. It was more about learning how to have a very real, authentic exchange between human beings, and I learned so much about myself over the course of those 2 years, and I think I gained more than I gave, and that's kind of a big lesson for me.
So, how did you feel that you kind of changed, or how did it affect you then?
I grew up. I feel like I grew up a lot. I saw everything slightly different, after working there, and I, it was very inspiring in a lot of ways. I think I can sometimes have a tendency to be quite cynical towards different aspects of life, but watching these young men and women, and seeing, reading their background and the horrific things that they had gone through, and then watching them just play a game of softball together, or play ping pong together, and laugh and be kids, was something that was incredibly inspiring, to see that type of resilience, that somehow a human being can still get to the point of laughter after going through these types of things. And yeah, I don't know. There's something quite hopeful about that too.
There is, I say, a lot of humour in the film, and you mentioned and humour there as well. So I was wondering, what kind of funny experiences do you remember when you look back on those 2 years?
I mean, I had a lot of fun working there. There was a lot of pranks were happening all the time. I mean, it feels a lot like a family. So, there are crazy game days, water balloon fights, and I had quite a few pranks pulled on me. There's jokes happening all the time. People, um, you know, busting each other's balls, so to speak, and but it's fun. It's a super fun job, and and I think that part of it, the laughter is not only just something that happens. I think it's a very necessary part of the job in order to survive, both for the youth and for the staff members. I think humor becomes a necessary ingredient for survival when you're there.
So how much of the film Short Term 12 is actually based on your own experiences, and how much on other people's? And of course your sister's a social worker as well, isn't she?
Yeah, yeah. Short Term 12 was the short that I did in 2009 was initially based primarily on my experience. And then when I did the feature, I also interviewed a handful of people who had worked in places like this for much longer than I did. And that a lot of their stories that they told me became the backstories of some of the characters in the movie, and became some of the, they were just woven into the storyline. And I'm not sure what the percentage is of what was taken from that, from them or from me, and so, I also, just from books that I had read on the subject, I took stories from that as well. Um, and yes, my sister's a social worker, so I'm sure that played some role into it, because she was reading a lot of the versions of the script as we were going along.
What did she think when she saw the film?
She loves it. Yeah, yeah. Thank goodness. I mean, I have three sisters, and they were all sort of. I was bouncing it off of all of them because I had never written from a female perspective before, and so writing Grace. Initially, I was really afraid of writing Grace, and but I was really relieved when they responded to the first script, and they only shunned me a little bit. But I changed everything that they didn't like.
I read that of all the characters you identified most with Brie Larson's character Grace. I wondered why that was in particular. And you also said that you, out of all the characters, you'd want to be more like Mason. And why is that too?
Sure. I mean, Grace, that was one of the things that I guess sort of surprised me. It was that I thought writing the Grace character would feel foreign to me. I thought that I would have to be, writing from an outsider, but I connect with everything that she's going through. At the base of it, she's going through an intense fear of being a parent, because of all the things that she's seeing. And she's afraid to do to her own child what she's seen being done to all these other kids that she's taking care of. And I know that fear. I'm not a dad yet, and I'm not sure when that will come. But I want to be as responsible as possible, and I think that fear is a healthy thing. And Mason, Mason just has this amazing way to be positive and to be self-deprecating and to use humor in such a smart way. He uses humor in a way to get make the environment a better place for people to live in. And there's something so wonderful about him that I do wish that I was much more like Mason.
And Grace has to be constantly reading people, doesn't she, and kind of assessing and analysing situations to keep the people in the centre safe. How good would you say you were at reading people?
Oh, I don't know. I initially, when I was working there, I wasn't good at reading anybody. I was just scared, for about 2 months. But that's something that I think you learn fairly quickly there, is to you start to know who these youth are and what their triggers are and what they've gone through, and you get to a point where if you see somebody picking at their finger or doing scratching certain parts of their head, you realize that is an early sign of possibly an explosion, or that something's on their mind, and that you should intervene early before it gets to a point. So yeah, watching those signs are very, it's very important, but it's something that you only learn by being on the job, I think.
We look forward to what's coming next for you. We heard very recently about the Glass Castle, that you're attached to that with Jennifer Lawrence. What are you looking forward to with getting going on that?
I mean, all I can say about that is I'm in love with that book, and I couldn't be more excited to explore that world, and I think there's a lot of themes that connect with short-term 12. There's a lot of and in a lot of ways it feels like a wonderful next step. But who knows what's going to happen? But I'm really excited about it.
I heard you were working on something new as well. Can you tease us a little bit about what we might expect?
The other script that I'm working on is inspired by my mom, and she raised 6 kids, and then after all of us left home, she had to relearn who she was before she was a mom, and she was the best mom ever. But watching her go through that transition was something that was really very interesting to me. So the process of writing this has given me the excuse to interview my mom and my grandparents about that period of their life. It's really interesting to me.